Warren Buffett pays a lower tax rate than his secretary. He's admitted this publicly. Jeff Bezos, while worth $18 billion, paid zero federal income tax in 2011. Elon Musk paid zero in 2018. These aren't accidents. These aren't illegal schemes. This is a system working exactly as designed. The wealthiest people on Earth have access to a financial playbook that most people don't know exists. It's legal, it's documented, and it explains why the rich keep getting richer while everyone else falls behind. Once you understand how it works, you can start applying parts of it yourself. The conventional understanding of wealth is fundamentally wrong. Most people believe the path to riches involves earning a high salary, paying taxes on that salary, saving what's left and slowly building a nest egg over decades. Work hard, get promoted, earn more, save more. This is the system taught in schools, reinforced by financial advisors and embedded in every aspect of middle-class life. And it's a trap. The wealthy don't play this game. They abandoned it generations ago. While everyone else trades time for money and watches nearly half of every paycheck disappear to taxes, the wealthy have constructed an entirely different system. A system built on 3 principles that most people have never heard of: own assets, never sell them, and borrow against them instead. The financial industry has a name for this strategy. They call it buy, borrow, die. Understanding why this works requires understanding how the tax system actually functions. Income is taxed. When someone earns a salary, that money is subject to federal income tax, state income tax, social security tax, and Medicare tax. A high earner in California might lose over 50% of each additional dollar earned to various taxes. The system is designed to extract maximum revenue from people who work for money. But here's what changes everything. Debt is not income. When someone borrows money, that's not a taxable event. The IRS doesn't consider a loan to be income because, in theory, it has to be paid back. This distinction is the foundation of the entire wealthy playbook. Consider how this works in practice. Someone owns $100 million in stock. That stock has appreciated enormously over the years, representing tens of millions in unrealized gains. If this person sells the stock to fund their lifestyle, they'll owe capital gains taxes on all that appreciation. At current rates, that could mean 20% federal tax plus state taxes plus the 3.8% net investment income tax. Selling $10 million in stock might generate a tax bill of $3 million or more. But what if they don't sell? What if instead they walk into a private bank and say they'd like to borrow $10 million, using their stock portfolio as collateral? The bank evaluates the request and agrees. Here's $10 million at perhaps 2 or 3% interest. Now examine what just happened. This person has $10 million in cash to spend. They can buy houses, cars, planes, or entire companies. But they haven't sold anything, so there are no capital gains taxes. They haven't earned anything, so there's no income tax. They've accessed $10 million completely tax-free. Meanwhile, their $100 million in stock is still growing. If the market returns 8% annually, that portfolio generates $8 million in new value each year. The interest on the $10 million loan might cost $300,000 annually. The math is overwhelming. They're gaining $8 million while paying $300,000. And they've accessed liquidity without triggering a single dollar in taxes. This is why ProPublica's reporting showed billionaires paying effective tax rates of less than 1%. They're not hiding money offshore. They're not using illegal schemes. They're using the tax code exactly as written, accessing their wealth through debt rather than income. The numbers are staggering when scaled to true billionaire wealth. Elon Musk reportedly had a $61 billion line of credit secured against his Tesla shares. Larry Ellison, founder of Oracle, has borrowed over $1 billion against his stock holdings. These aren't mortgages on houses. These are massive credit facilities that function as personal ATMs, all without generating taxable income. The banks love this arrangement. They're lending against assets worth far more than the loan amount. If a billionaire borrows $100 million against $500 million in stock, the bank has a 5-to-1 collateral ratio. The risk is minimal, the interest payments are reliable. Private banks compete aggressively for this business, offering rates that normal consumers could never access. Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, and others have dedicated wealth management divisions specifically designed to service these lending relationships. But the strategy doesn't end with borrowing. The real magic happens at death. Under current US tax law, when someone dies, their assets receive what's called a stepped-up basis. This is the most powerful wealth transfer mechanism in the tax code, and most Americans have never heard of it. Here's how it works. Suppose someone bought Amazon stock in 1997 for $100,000. Over the decades, that stock grew to $50 million. That's $49.9 million in unrealized capital gains. If this person sold the stock while alive, they'd owe taxes on the entire gain, potentially over $10 million in combined federal and state taxes. But if they die still holding the stock, something remarkable happens. Their heirs inherit the stock with a new cost basis equal to its value at the time of death. The $100,000 original purchase price is erased. The new basis is $50 million. If the heirs sell immediately for $50 million, they owe zero capital gains taxes. The $49.9 million in appreciation is never taxed. Not by the deceased, not by the heirs, never. This is the die part of buy, borrow, die. The loans taken during the person's lifetime get paid off from the estate. The assets transfer to heirs with a stepped-up basis. The heirs can then continue the exact same strategy. Hold the assets, borrow against them, and pass them to the next generation with another stepped-up basis. The Walton family, heirs to the Walmart fortune, have used variations of this strategy for decades. The Mars family, owners of the candy empire, same approach. The Koch family, the Pritzkers, the Lauders. Every major dynastic fortune in America employs these mechanisms. This isn't secret information. Estate planners, tax attorneys, and wealth managers discuss these strategies openly in professional circles. The information simply doesn't reach ordinary people. The system extends beyond just borrowing against stocks. Real estate offers similar advantages. A wealthy investor purchases apartment buildings worth $50 million. They use depreciation deductions to offset rental income, often paying minimal or zero taxes on the cash flow. The properties appreciate over time. Instead of selling and triggering capital gains, they execute what's called a 1031 exchange, swapping into new properties and deferring the taxes indefinitely. Meanwhile, they borrow against the equity in these properties to fund their lifestyle. When they die, the heirs receive the stepped-up basis and the cycle continues. Private equity and hedge fund managers have their own versions. The carried interest loophole allows fund managers to treat their income as capital gains rather than ordinary income, cutting their tax rate nearly in half. Opportunity zone investments allow wealthy individuals to defer and reduce capital gains by investing in designated areas. Family offices, which are private wealth management firms serving single families, employ teams of lawyers and accountants whose entire job is optimizing these structures. The contrast with how ordinary Americans build wealth is devastating. A typical family earns wages, pays taxes immediately, and invests what's left. Every year they pay taxes on dividends and interest. If they need money, they sell assets and pay capital gains taxes. When they die, their estate might face estate taxes on everything above the exemption amount. The wealthy face none of these friction costs. They've built a parallel system where wealth compounds untouched by taxation, generation after generation. This explains a puzzle that confuses many observers: why wealth inequality keeps accelerating despite economic growth. The returns to capital are being captured almost entirely by those who already have capital. The tax system that applies to workers doesn't apply to owners. Two completely different games are being played in the same economy. Some numbers illustrate the scale. The top 1% of Americans own more wealth than the entire middle class. The top 0.1% have seen their share of national wealth triple since the 1980s. The 400 richest Americans own more than the bottom 150 million combined. These aren't natural outcomes of talent and hard work. These are the predictable results of a system designed to compound existing wealth while extracting from everyone else. The system perpetuates itself politically. Wealthy families donate to politicians who protect these tax provisions. Lobbying groups fight any proposed changes. When the Biden administration proposed eliminating the stepped-up basis in 2021, the backlash was immediate and overwhelming. The proposal died quietly. The carried interest loophole has survived multiple reform attempts spanning decades. The system has built its own defenses. What can ordinary people actually do with this knowledge? The honest answer is that the full strategy requires substantial existing wealth. Someone can't borrow against assets they don't have. But understanding the system changes how rational people should approach wealth building. First, the priority should be accumulating assets rather than maximizing income. Every financial decision should filter through one question: Does this build assets that appreciate and generate value? The goal isn't a higher salary. The goal is ownership. Second, strategic debt is a tool, not a trap. A mortgage on a rental property that generates positive cash flow is fundamentally different from credit card debt. Securities-backed line of credit at low interest rates is fundamentally different from a car loan. Learning to distinguish between debt that builds wealth and debt that destroys it is essential. Third, holding periods matter enormously. Selling assets triggers taxes and resets the clock. The wealthy hold assets for decades, often for generations. Patience isn't just a virtue in the system, it's the primary wealth-building mechanism. Fourth, tax-advantaged accounts matter more than most people realize. Roth IRAs allow tax-free growth and tax-free withdrawals. Assets inside these accounts can compound for decades without taxation. For ordinary people, these accounts are the closest equivalent to the billionaire playbook. Fifth, home equity can function similarly to asset-backed lending. A home equity line of credit allows homeowners to access their property's value without selling and without triggering taxes. This is a scaled-down version of the exact strategy billionaires use. The system wealthy people use isn't a conspiracy hidden in offshore accounts. It's documented in the tax code, discussed openly in professional circles, and implemented through mainstream financial institutions. The mechanisms are legal, established, and available to anyone who understands them and accumulates the assets to deploy them. The real secret isn't any single tactic. The real secret is understanding that two parallel financial systems exist in America. One system taxes labor heavily and forces workers to sell assets to access their value. The other system allows owners to borrow against assets, defer taxes indefinitely, and pass wealth to heirs tax-free. Most people spend their entire lives in the first system without knowing the second one exists. Now you know. The question isn't whether the system is fair. The question is what you do with this knowledge.